Hey everybody, Chris Coonahan here for Leaf Filter. I often give homeowners advice on TV, but I wanted to share my expertise here too. The question I'm most often asked is, how does Leaf Filter work so well? Well, our trusted pros clean out your gutters, realign and seal your gutters, and install Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system. Leaf Filter inspection and estimate are always free for new customers. Plus, you can get up to 30% off if you go to leaffilter.com/gold. That's leaffilter.com/gold.
See representative for warranty details. Promotion is 20% off plus a 10% senior or military discount. One discount per household.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Forster, and welcome to the Multi-Story Thinking Podcast. I'm an interior designer and educator. My job is to improve quality of life and productivity by helping people to create beautiful and practical spaces to live and work in. The Multi-Story Thinking Podcast takes an educational slant to the interior design world. So sit back, relax, as we help unravel the mysteries of interior design. This week I'm talking to Abigail Chandler. Abigail is a director of furniture and lighting retailer Viaduct. With over 25 years of experience, Abigail works with interior designers and architects to understand and meet their briefs in terms of design, budget and availability. I spoke to Abby earlier this year via Zoom. In this episode, we discover the importance of building relationships with clients, how visiting site can highlight design opportunities, the specification process and how materials can help convey emotions, and how taking a work placement in Leeds opened up a career mixing business with design. Hello, Abby. Thanks very much for joining me on the Multi-Story Thinking Podcast. You're coming through loud and clear from London.
Excellent.
It's good
Thanks for having me.
We were just talking off air about how long we've known each other and how long you've been at Viaduct. You've been there for quite a long time, and we met even longer time before that, didn't we? But
We did.
you've had a long time within the industry working in this sector, and you described your role as being contract sales consultant. Can you just sort of give us an idea of what that means and what your role at Viaduct is?
Yeah, sure. So I'm essentially a salesperson, but I work with architects and interior designers to help them realise their projects within the areas of furniture and lighting and sometimes accessories. So where we work best is where we have really well developed relationships with clients, and we have a lot of long-standing clients who come back to us time and time again, so we get to build quite good relationships with them, and we help them to kind of navigate the world of furniture and lighting, which can be quite complicated, in order to get the best pieces into their project on time and on budget.
What type of projects are you mainly working on then?
All sorts of projects. So everything from high-end residential projects where we'll work with an architect or an interior designer, and then with the person that's going to live in the house as well, right through to the world of hospitality, so restaurants, hotels, bars, coffee shops, through to the workplace where we'll do office projects, and more of co-working spaces now because they've become so popular. I've done all sorts, embassies. All around the world.
Embassies and
we've done football stadiums.
Yeah. I guess it's anywhere where you need furniture, which is
absolutely
most
which is everywhere.
Yeah. When you're working with interior designers and architects, you must get different levels of engagement with them, I suppose.
Yes.
From those that know exactly what they want through to those that maybe are looking for ideas.
Yes.
How does your role vary between those different types of designers?
Well, I would say always where it works best is where we're given context about the project, and also where the client understands the process. I think in anything creative, if you're working in a mutually advantageous partnership where both sides understand the process, whether you're making something or designing something, if both sides have an understanding of the process, you can kind of come to a richer understanding, I think, of what can be achieved. So sometimes we have people come to us with a shopping list that they've detailed very, in great detail, because they've found out a lot of information themselves from the internet, which of course is one of the areas where our business has changed so much. And that, we're happy to price things up for people. That's not a problem. But as I said, where we work best is where we're given more of a brief, and we are allowed some space to bring our creative ideas to the process. And then maybe we can bring some things to the process that the interior designer hasn't really considered before or doesn't know about.
Yeah,
and that's where we add benefit.
You've got a better understanding of the full range of furniture and accessories and variations of the types of furniture that are available, which the designer wouldn't necessarily know about.
There's a lot of manufacturers out there that are quite under the radar, and that don't have big budgets to do a lot of online representation or marketing schemes. And we always like to be finding new makers that we can bring to the UK market. That's something that our business has always, as Viaduct, has always, strived to do.
That gives you a more unique. No, that gives you a. I'll say that again. It can't be more unique, can you?
Uniquer.
More uniquer. That gives you a unique portfolio of products.
Yes. And that's where I would say James has been very influential. So he will seek out new makers, wherever he goes around the world, and try and bring them back. And sometimes that works really well, and other times, it's not so commercial. But sometimes the non-commercial people are really interesting, and they might lead off on in another direction, or maybe someone you show in the showroom very early on in their career may not be designing very commercial pieces, but they might pop up later, working for someone like a big manufacturer. And then, it's very interesting to see how designers' careers weave through the market like that.
You'll have been able to follow those, won't you, over time? I think
Yes.
The interesting thing about the Viaduct showroom is that, first of all, it's quite a modest space, and to convey the full breadth of what's available is clearly impossible. What you've got there is a really well curated selection of elements that fit together and kind of open up the possibilities of what's feasible in terms of what you could mix with what, and
yes.
And that's where I guess you come in to then take the conversation further with more in-depth knowledge of products that are available but aren't on show.
Absolutely. And kind of that's where the magic happens. We have a really fantastic team in the showroom who are always looking at new fabrics, new textures. They're following colour trends. We have all the different manufacturers coming to us all the time, wanting to have things on the floor, which is fantastic. There's so much to choose from. But we have to, as you say, we don't have limitless space, and obviously we don't have limitless budget, because we have to buy all the things mainly that we display.
Yeah.
So it takes quite a lot of, creative thinking to put that display together. And sometimes you just get really lovely surprises. When you put a lamp on a table, you think, oh God, I never thought about those two things before, but it doesn't look that fab. That looks really, really nice. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, there's sort of accidental adjacencies, I suppose, of products.
Exactly. And also that's another benefit of having a multi-brand business, that you can be curatorial like that. Is that the right word? Curatorial?
I think so, yeah. So, yeah, you're not fixed like to a range that have to go together. You can
exactly.
Mix.
Yeah.
And what's the process of the creative process in terms of what you're actually doing, your team, when you're working with an interior designer? Does it extend to space planning and selection of fabric?
Yes, we can space plan. For example, one of my colleagues recently did a fantastic office project where she was working with a beautiful desking system from Hay, but it was quite a new product. So she basically had to draw every single configuration. So I'd say that is probably the top end of what we would do in terms of space planning is that we would actually make a drawing for each configuration of shelving within that space, because they were all different. But mainly we would do more like layouts for people where they weren't, most of our clients are confident with their layouts and their drawings, because we are working with interior designers and architects.
So it's more about matching the products to the layout and then drilling down into the detail of the specification.
Exactly. It's finding something that's the right size, that's the right price, which is very important. Lead time might be an issue. Lead time can vary so much. You have things that are available ex stock, things that take 10 weeks to make, things like rugs that can take much, much longer. And then, yes, down to the finishes. Finishes is really important, and we can help a lot with that because we're always sourcing new fabrics from the different fabric houses. So
that's a full sort of service to take the designer from that initial ideas right through to delivery and installation. Absolutely.
And at Viaduct, that's one of our things that we focus on, is a very high level of service, because obviously there are a lot of, we have competitors in our market, but what we've always tried to do is provide a high level of service all the way through. So once we've helped someone establish their specification, then after that, they're looked after quite carefully in terms of all the order placing. And then we have a fab installation team, who will go on site and deliver, assemble, removal of all the packaging, things like that you wouldn't necessarily think about. Like if you deliver 20 chairs, there's quite a lot of packaging that goes with that needs to then be taken away, recycled, disposed of. These are the little areas where people that buy online can come a little bit unstuck.
Yeah, that's the extra service, isn't it? That as opposed to rocking up to IKEA and buying a load of and then trying to get them in the back of your car.
Exactly.
So that's one way of differentiating yourself from others. How are the other ways of perhaps sort of competing, or what's unique about the offer that you've got?
Well, always going back to that design-led ethos of finding new and exciting product, showing it, displaying it in the showroom in ways that people haven't thought about before, just trying to make as something a little bit different for us. And if you look at the main competitors in the London market, I'm not going to name any names, but I think everyone knows, who the 4 or 5 main companies are who do a very similar job to us. And we're all very friendly, by the way. That's not, each of those companies does have a very strong company identity, I think, that isn't the same as the other companies. So you can do that, and that's
people are buying into the ethos and the way in which you sort of think and work.
I think so. I think they are. Sometimes they are, not always. Sometimes they just say, "Oh, so and so's offered me this price. Can you better it?" We'll always look at that, but we won't necessarily ever be led by that.
In a market where price is important, you think that these extra facets to your business in terms of customer service and also the ethos and the kind of attitude of your company is what's important, setting you apart? And because I know that the half a dozen other companies in London selling what on the face of it might look very similar products, but it's the way it's put together and the way it's managed, I guess, that sets each of you apart in their own individual way.
Absolutely. And also going back to those relationships, each of those companies has strong relationships with different architects and designers within that community. So there are some practices that prefer to use one dealer, and there are some practices prefer to use us, and that's fine. And luckily within the market, usually there's enough work for everyone to go around, and so that's not
so people are following people then, in that sense, I guess.
People are definitely following people, and that's one of the lovely things about the industry, is that you get to work with not just fabulous clients but your suppliers as well. You get to make really strong relationships with different suppliers and clients all the way through, and that makes it more fun and more rewarding at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I've been following you since 1990. Not in any weird way, but we first met when you were working for Peter Leonard Associates, was it?
That's right, yeah.
And I got the job selling furniture for the sort of sub-brand, I guess, Soho Design, which was a furniture collection.
Yeah.
And back in the day.
Yeah.
And that was before the internet, wasn't it? Was it before? It was.
It was before the internet.
People won't imagine the time when the internet didn't exist, will they?
No, we had lovely brochures.
Yeah, brochures, and we used to phone each other up and ask questions. And
yeah, we did.
And
I remember you and I spending quite a lot of time on the phone.
yeah. It was quiet days. It was a different time. I mean, but what sort of the parallel, I suppose, is there was modern, newly designed furniture being sold, creating these spaces, both contract and residential, which were design led. That hasn't changed. But how, apart from the internet, the wonderful internet, how's it shifted in your mind since those days when you were working for Peter Leonard to now?
It's interesting thinking about Peter and what he was doing, because I think he was very forward thinking, but also looking to the past, which was very interesting. I don't know if you remember, but in the little shop we had on the King's Road, he used to buy old pieces from markets, flea markets, and display them alongside with the modern furniture, which was, that sounds really everyday now, but people weren't really doing that back then. And
eclectic look, wasn't it?
People loved that. They really loved that. And also they would come in the shop and maybe they wouldn't spend, £200 or £300 on a chair, but they might go off with a little toy boat or something, that cost a £5. It's quite nice. But yeah, I mean, I would say, for me, there's so much more education now about design within the general public.
Yeah.
So if I think about some of the early travels I did when I was young, when I was a student, going to Barcelona, I'll never forget seeing cowhide on the front of a bar for the first time, in Barcelona, and just thinking, oh my God, so interior design in terms of restaurants and bars just massively exploded in the 90s. And then, of course, followed by lots and lots of great, TV education, lots and lots of designers coming out into the media. And so I think design's just become much more accessible.
And the internet, of course, has opened up the...
And the internet's just opened that up and fed it and enabled it to grow even more.
Yeah, I think you can certainly, as a designer, get more information more rapidly.
Yeah.
I suppose that probably cuts out a lot of the toing and froing that we might have been doing years ago, just trying to find information.
Yes, absolutely. And in the same, and in a funny way, that has changed our role massively, because we're no longer the kind of gatekeepers of that information.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more democratic. But what it doesn't take away from us is that service role, is that specialist, in the same way that you would have a specialist to deal with your legal problems or your health problems, or anything to do. If your house was falling down, you would really need an architect to help you put that back together again. And what we do is that kind of level of professionalism within the, for furniture and for lighting.
What's the sort of things that you think designers should be doing to prepare before they contact you then?
It's very helpful if they have a really good understanding of their client's expectations, because obviously behind the designer there's another client who's the end user client. And so it's very helpful for us if they can have a good idea of their expectations in terms of budget and time frame and things like that, so that when they come, and then to brief us as fully as they can, to give us as much information as they can, instead of kind of holding it back. Just really involve us, because we can do such a better job if we have all the information.
Better understanding of the context of the client.
Yeah. I've worked with some clients. I think of one in particular who when she can, she takes me on site really early. I mean, they're resi projects, so it's a bit easier. But she takes me on site, when the building's stripped back virtually to nothing. And that's just such amazing input, because, and then I'll go back a bit later, obviously, when there's a few walls or whatever. But if you can get involved that early on, you can really help to provide concepts, that will really make a space sing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and the opportunity to intervene in the design process and shift it in the right direction or tweak it slightly?
Well, I don't think that's not necessarily our role, but just to see maybe how the light's going to fall in a space, or that tricky junction where there might be some circulation issues, things like that, where we might say, well, have you thought about having a round table there, or have you thought about having some storage against that wall, or have you, things like that. So practical issues as well as aesthetic.
Some things that you might not necessarily immediately grasp looking at a plan then.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seeing things in real space, in 3D, really important.
I'm just going to jump back to how you got into Soho. So how did you get into your role? It's funny, isn't it? I kind of always thought that I just kind of fell into this career almost by accident. But when I started to look at it, preparing for this to talk to you, I realised that wasn't the case at all. It was kind of so I grew up. My mum's a design journalist, so I grew up with design all around me all the time. But my sister's 5 years older than me, and she did art, and so I was quite a stroppy teenager. You'll be surprised to hear. And I just thought, nah, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that just because my sister had done it. I thought, well, I can't do that. So I didn't really know what to do. And so I went off to Leeds. What's the poly called now? No, that's showing me age. Is that Leeds Met?
Yes, Leeds Met Uni. And I did a kind of multidisciplinary degree there, not in design. But the highlight of that for me, well, one of the highlights, was they offered a work placement, and I did my work placement in the shop at the Leeds City Art Gallery. They had a beautiful shop. I don't know if it's still there, but at that time they had a beautiful shop underneath the Leeds City Art Gallery, and it was run by this fantastic team, and they were displaying ceramics, jewellery, textiles, and small pieces of furniture, all very contemporary, mostly craft orientated, handmade pieces. And that for me, that was the first time I just thought, oh my God, this is what I want to do. It was that combination of business and design. For me, that was the first time I'd seen design objects in a shop situation, in a sales situation. So that kind of lit something up within me. And then after my degree, I came back to London and messed around a bit, and including just doing some, working in a shop on the King's Road. And I decided I couldn't bear working in this shop any longer that I was in. So I just went up for a walk at the King's Road, and I saw an ad in Soho's window saying they needed someone. And I thought, oh, well, that's perfect. That's exactly what I like, that furniture, and I can carry on, working in that environment for a bit. And that's what I started to do. And that was great, really good fun, great education. The great thing about working for Peter is that Soho Design was just a kind of little offshoot off the main design studio. So I was working alongside interior designers and graphic designers, and
they were the classic multidisciplinary interior design led.
Exactly,
weren't they?
Yeah, and that was brilliant. That was such a great learning experience. But then that recession hit. That would have been the early 90s recession. So I was going to be laid off, and very sweetly they kind of gave me a bit of prior warning, and I managed to get myself a job at Aram Designs in Covent Garden. First of all, working with Ruth in Hampstead, and then moving over to the contract department in Covent Garden. And I spent about 5 years there. And again, incredible learning experience, working with Zev Aram, all of those classic pieces, the Corbusier, Eileen Gray, Ruth had made me learn the chair rack back to front, which I still can remember now. She made me learn all the designers, all the manufacturers. And then after that, that's when I went over to work for James. So again, it was just all the time, the business with design for me, because I'd always been interested in business and I'd always been interested in design, but I didn't want to be a designer, and this role just enables me to mesh those two things together.
It's some of the heavyweights of the design industry there in your accidental career.
Yeah.
I remember getting the job for Soho. I was on the bus, some bus in London, and I reached over to a newspaper. It must have been the Standard on the seat in front of me when I was on the dole then, and opened the thing, and there was an advert for the sales role that I applied for and got the job.
Yeah.
Another accidental or fortuitous
Yeah.
time, but there was quite an exciting time in design, because particularly down the King's Road as well, because you had Designers Guild, you had Conran, you had Habitat, all really
and Heels and
all these sort of powerful, strong design-led retail environments.
Yeah.
And the start of those design companies like Peter Leonard producing some exciting spaces, which you could go and see, whether they were shops or bars or restaurants.
And they were big brands. They, I remember Peter Leonard was working with the Science Museum, all sorts of institutions, and it was great. You just felt like it was just design was being used, right across the board in so many different places, which was really interesting.
With the furniture that Viaduct is selling at the moment, or have been over the years, it's quite, I'm trying to think of what the best word is. It's sort of higher end design, isn't it? It's more, what is the consumer getting in the investment into those types of products over and above what you might get on the high street, or, sort of lower down the market, I guess.
Well, it will come down to quality, it will come down to the way the pieces are made, essentially, in most cases. So it'll be the way that the frame of something's made, whether it's made with upholstery, for example, whether it's made of timber or it's a molded frame, or whether it's just a few bits of metal bashed together. The fillings, you can tell if something's using the higher quality fillings and foams and feathers. You can look at stitching, fabrics, all the way through, in the same way that you would with fashion. So you can see if something's mass produced to a lower price point, and nothing wrong with that. I'm all for lots and lots of people being able to access good design. That's really important. But I suppose there's always that trade-off, isn't there, between quality and price.
I studied furniture, and I will always manage to sort of design or introduce furniture into spaces, just thinking about whether there's an important role of furniture to help shape spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is. I mean, I think you can break that down into different categories. So obviously you've got your practical, structural elements to do with problem solving, like storage, and perhaps we could bring like spatial division into that, because you can divide a big space, very easily with a few bits of furniture, and create spaces so that people have, some shelter, privacy. You can do a lot with acoustics with furniture, for example. And then you've got the aesthetic concerns as well. So you can bring so much emotion with furniture. I think we've all seen beautifully designed spaces that have some crappy furniture stuck in them that you just think, I'm terrible when I'm watching things like Grand Designs, because you do the final reveal and you see this fantastically designed space, and then they've stuck all their old, crappy furniture, and they just think, oh gosh, why did they do that? Things, they've probably come to the end of the budget by that point. But you can ruin a space with bad furniture, and equally you can really bring a space up with good furniture. It's like the icing on the cake, And then you can add interest. You can add senses of luxury, or with finishes and detailing and velvets and lighting, especially. That's where lighting gets really important. And then at the other end, sense of utility perhaps you want in more of a workspace arena, where you want things more functional, and where people are going to move around the area in different ways. So maybe you want to delineate touchdown areas or hot desking areas, or
It's certainly one of the things that everyone touches, isn't it? That's the thing. Mostly your interaction with the furniture is very physical and direct.
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about how all of this big revolution we've had in office spaces becoming so much more like domestic spaces, I think furniture's really almost led that by adding character, by adding more like domestic references into workspaces. So with texture, shape, different types of upholstery, different maybe fun elements that you would have at home that you wouldn't necessarily have traditionally had in the workplace.
What's your favourite bit of the process?
Oh, that's really hard. I don't know if I can answer that. Getting the order? What do you want me to be? Do you want me to be a salesperson? There's always a thrill when you get an initial brief. If it's something you're interested in, if the project sounds exciting, you can't really beat that. Especially if it's a client you've worked with a lot, and you just think, okay, here we go. This is fun. Let's ramp up. Let's see what we can do with this. Yeah. That's good fun. And then that gets your ideas flowing, gets the creative juices flowing, and you start thinking about different things you could put in there. But I think what I really like the most is thinking about all of these different things all the time. So I'm constantly thinking, okay, what's going to look nice? What can they afford? What will my competitors not be able to get hold of? Sometimes you've got to think quite, you've got to box clever. You've got to maybe introduce things that that you can get hold of that other people can't get hold of so readily.
Yeah.
Because later on down the line, you don't want all of your work. If you imagine all of this consultation that we're giving is free, so we can spend hours and hours on a project, and if the order doesn't come our way at the end of the day, then that's gone. That's just, so we have to think about obviously the client's best interest, but we also have to think in a business sense as well.
How best to put your products forward. Yeah,
so that we can, increase our chances of actually getting the order at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, we are a business. We're not a charity. So it's all of those things, and I love being in that situation where I've got to think about all of those things at the same time, and it's all just the weighing up all these different things, and then hopefully at the end of that, it all goes into the machine, and out pops the perfect chair.
Yeah, perfect selection for your client.
Yeah. So I think that's probably my favourite bit. When you're in the showroom, sometimes you're sitting down with some clients and you've got all the fabrics out and you've got all the samples off the shelves and everyone's, trying things and that's great fun. You can think you've got it all down pat, and then the proper client comes in and might just sit on something and say, nah.
Don't like it.
Not comfortable. She might be the MD of a company of thousands of people. But if they don't find it comfortable, most likely they will not buy that chair for all the thousands of people who might find it comfortable. So in that situation, you've got to think, oh, right, okay, quick, what else? Come
That's
forward.
That's quite a challenge, that. I remember that
it can be quite a challenge, yeah.
I was working on a placement in a upholstery manufacturers, and the MD was about 6'6". Yeah. And he'd come in and sit down and say, no, it's not big enough,
Yeah.
We were rolling our eyes thinking, you're
not really standard size.
Yeah. Wheeling the average person. But I think it's that excitement of the possibility, isn't it? That's what I like, when you're getting the samples out and you're matching a floor finish with a metal colour and a fabric and think, that looks good. Yeah. And then another change and there's another version, it's the art of the possible, isn't it?
And it's bringing up those layers, when you think about, I love to think about kind of layering up from the ground. So maybe you have a rug, you might start with that, put some hard things on that, like a chair and tables, and then what are you going to do over here with the sofa? What are you going to do with that fabric? How's that going to soften this? Hang on, what's happening on the walls over there? What kind of surface are they? So you're thinking about all of those textures all the time as well, and all those different elements that are all coming into the melting pot. So, let's not use timber maybe on that storage because we've already got a lot of timber over here in this. So, maybe we'll do that in a laminate or a lacquer finish instead.
That sounds really great, actually, and having the knowledge of what's possible. I think that's where specification of furniture can often fall down if designers just go for what they know, They specify within what they're experienced with using or have seen, but working.
I understand why people do that in a way, because I think it's really hard, especially if you're spending large quantities of your clients' money. And if you're ordering furniture, and sometimes people have to order things they haven't seen because we can't possibly display everything. So, there are some clients that like to use the same pieces over and over again in projects. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because if you've bought that table for a client and you know it works, and when it comes, it looks gorgeous, and you know that the quality is great, and you know it's got these adjustable feet that are going to work on anyone's tiled, dodgy floors because you can level them, and things like that. interior designers think about things like that, and they log that away and they think that got me out. That got me out of a little pickle there.
Yeah.
I'll use that again. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it is great to be able to introduce people to new things, new companies. And that's why we go, I don't think we've mentioned, but we go to several trade fairs a year, looking at all the new products from all our existing manufacturers, but also finding new ones as well and getting updated.
Whereabouts are they? I mean, a lot of your manufacturers are from Italy and, well, mainly kind of mainland Europe, is that right? Or
yeah, mainly mainland Europe, and lots of Scandinavian companies now, more and more, and even we have a really lovely Japanese supplier also. So we go to Stockholm in February always, and that's very inspiring for the Scandinavian suppliers. And then of course the big one is Milan in April, which very sadly is cancelled this year, so we'll be missing that. And then there are a couple of other shows later in the year where maybe one or two of us will go to Maison Objet in Paris, or the more business oriented shows in Cologne and things like that.
Must be very difficult having to do all that.
Oh, it's really hard work.
That's the thing, it isn't. It is hard work, isn't it?
There's a lot of traipsing about. I think for your students, it's interesting, isn't it? Would they consider how many people that go through a design course consider this as a job at the end of it? I'm not sure any do really, or.
Well, that's a good question, actually. I know that we do talk to students about these types of positions as being potential points of employment.
Yeah.
But they're probably initially thinking they're going to be a designer.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be a designer. And actually opening up the awareness of opportunities is quite interesting because...
Yeah, I'd like to do that because I think that... it can be a really interesting job for people if they have the right mindset. They just have to have that right mindset. Interestingly, it's really difficult to find good salespeople in our industry because of that, needing that combination of creativity with the business sense, because the business sense is really important. So and if you haven't got that, you can't do the job.
You need to have a bit of designer in you as well as a business person.
Exactly, and that's sounds easy, but actually it's a really difficult animal to find.
How can you encourage that then? What sort of advice or training would a student need? Design student, for example?
Well, I would say, especially in what happened in my case, is that work placement, is always looking out for combining a bit of working alongside studying.
Yeah.
And even, I did loads of waitressing when I was a student, and that taught me loads about, customer service, time management, shortcuts to make your life easier and managing yourself. And so I think that certainly for people that come into our industry, they can be nicely surprised, that they can make a decent living selling really beautiful things. And it's not just like selling cardboard boxes, it's actually, there is a process and there's creative input.
I'd like to thank Abby for taking the time to talk to me. Her job role at Viaduct provides a really amazing resource of experience and skills that can support the design process. I've worked with Abby and her team on lots of projects where their support role and suggestions of products and materials and finishes has proved critical in really getting the most out of each design project. It's really interesting to hear the way Abby talks about materials and specification and the selection of furniture to create the mood and also provide the practical support for the spaces that are being designed. It's important to think deeply about how pieces of furniture interact within spaces and shape the way people use spaces. And Abby and her team provide some fantastic support for the process. And their knowledge of new products helps you to create individual designs that can help your concept stand out. It's a really satisfying area of design that our graduates from the interior design course at the University of Plymouth would do well to consider. We're training students to become interior designers, but there's a whole breadth of other areas of the industry that they can step into and use their creative skills and their business talent to create a career that can be really rewarding. If you'd like to know how to be a kick-ass interior designer, have a look at the link for the interior design course at the University of Plymouth, which sits alongside the product and furniture design course. I'd like to thank Dave Clark from I Am The How for his technical support and advice in the setting up of this podcast. Kay Hansen for her planning support and co-hosting role for these and our educational podcasts for the University of Plymouth, and Mark Frith for the music. I'd really like to hear your comments and feedback. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.